In the previous video, we took a look at the main global infrastructure components of AWS. This, of course, is AWS regions and the AWS availability zones. I briefly mentioned edge locations, but I wanted to expand on that in this video, and I also wanted to show you some other important infrastructure components that are really focused, just like edge locations, around latency. You see, that's a big potential issue for AWS, isn't it? We know that if stuff is running in the cloud, it may have a chance to feature higher latency than if it was running locally in your own organization or software you installed on your own systems, not running cloud-based. Yeah, latency is a really big deal for AWS. So we mentioned edge locations and regional caches in the previous video. Remember, anytime you see a map of locations, it's probably out of date, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the little blue dots that you see on this global map. Those are edge locations for AWS. Remember, edge locations work in conjunction with AWS CloudFront. So let's say I create some web application and I want to make sure that it is available as low latency as possible all over the globe. I'm going to engage in CloudFront caching of this web application so that no matter where someone is on the globe and they're trying to access it, it'll come up more quickly. So this whole concept of CloudFront for caching our web content is such a valuable thing when it comes to low latency delivery of our AWS solutions. What are the purple dots in this map? Well, those are locations where there's actually multiple edge locations set up. And what are the larger yellow/orange circles in this illustration? Well, those are regional caches. Yeah, what AWS is doing here is there's so much demand in these areas that AWS is actually building multiple layers of the caching so that they can try and improve the latency even more. And a big thing is put less of a burden on the AWS systems that are actually the source of that content. So edge locations and regional caches, a big time attempt to speed things up for our end users that are trying to access our solution. Now, speaking of speeding things up, AWS has also added local zones to the global infrastructure. This is for those very, very busy parts of the world. So here you can see the US West 2 region. You can see its classic availability zones, and you can see how AWS has extended this out in the LAX region, and they have a local zone that we can take advantage of. Notice our virtual private cloud will flow right across to that local zone so we can put resources inside of that local zone, making them even closer to the individuals that want to work with these solutions. And guess what? This local zone concept isn't the only specialized zone that AWS has for us these days. There's also wavelength zones. Wavelength zones are for our mobile applications. That's right. Notice that a carrier service provider, right? So a mobile carrier, we can tap right in to that mobile carrier by setting up a wavelength zone. So we're going to be tapping into the carrier network much more efficiently with a wavelength zone, and this is going to help reduce the latency of our mobile applications that we might be publishing via AWS. So we should understand wavelength zones as another specialized zone type that we can use to improve the latency on mobile apps. Now, something that we should all consider is AWS Direct Connect. This is another global infrastructure component that is really designed around lower latency and also more control and higher security. You see, instead of using a shared connection, a normal internet connection, which is a shared connection to get into AWS, what we do with Direct Connect is we go ahead and connect directly via a Direct Connect private connection into the AWS cloud. Yeah, so we're going to work with a service provider in our area that offers AWS Direct Connect services, and we're going to have a beautiful private line that we completely control. We're the only ones utilizing, and now we have our own private connection into the AWS cloud. Notice this enhances security, it enhances performance, it's going to once again reduce latency on us accessing our AWS solutions. And the final additional global infrastructure component, this may really blow your mind if you have never heard about it, but you talk about reducing the latency, it's AWS Outposts. These are servers and racks that we can purchase from AWS and we can install them in our facility. Isn't that amazing? So now we are taking the hardware and the software that makes the AWS cloud a reality, and we're locating the hardware and software in our local data center, or branch office or factory location. So if we're experiencing latency problems getting up to the cloud, here we're bringing the cloud right into our local facility with the AWS Outposts feature. So notice how the emphasis in these additional global infrastructure components was all about reducing the latency for those of us that want to take advantage of AWS services. Well, I'm sure there'll be more global infrastructure components that are created by AWS. We'll just have to wait and see what they are.